February 14th, 2019, that is when we were first told about Silksong 5 whole years ago. And while it's been memed to death, there's a reason. That's crazy. Normally when I'm thinking about games I'm gonna create for this channel, I typically go for ones that, well, exist. But last month I dropped a video where I made Hollow Knight in Minecraft, and it got the attention of quite a few Hollow Knight YouTubers. And after a few weeks, it led to me playing Silksong for myself, but not the actual Silksong. Take a look. This here is Primacon. He reached out to me after the Hollow Knight video and offered to fund a Silksong in Minecraft project. And my first thought was, how? Like I said, it's been 5 years and no release date has been announced. How am I meant to recreate something that does not exist? Well, apparently it does exist. 3 years ago, a Silksong demo was dropped in an event, and it still has not been released to the general public, but footage exists of it online, which is all I'd need to make something for myself. This demo had 2 full boss fights, so I was like, why not, and started up on the project. So here's how it went. But first, if you want to download this map for yourself, as always it'll be completely free to download once the like goal has been hit. And for this video I'm thinking 10k, so expect a free download in the description once it hits 10,000 likes. Also, fun fact, when I say the word subscribe, the subscribe button gets a cool little glowing rainbow effect around it. I'm not lying, go look. And while you're down there, you might as well press it. Alright, on with the video. So here's what I have in plan for the map. There are 2 boss fights, which will be what the map is focused around, as well as a small section of the area before said boss fights. This will be linked through a hub where you can select what you're going to play. The character you'll be playing as is Hornet, a side character in Hollow Knight and the main character in Silksong. However, since we still had the nice movement code and models already from the previous map, I just went, whatever, and added both of them. And that means because we have 2 different sets of movement codes and characters, it can allow me to make this map multiplayer, which is a nice little addition. If 2 people are on the map and you go in, it'll pull both of you in, with one person being whatever you selected and the other person being whichever character you didn't select. This also triples the health of the bosses, which makes it slightly more of a challenge, because with 2 players these bosses are shamefully easy. When it comes to building the map, I wanted to get it done as soon as possible while still making it quality. So I only used vanilla textures rather than making my own. But with the new tuff blocks and copper blocks that were added in the newer versions of Minecraft, it's like this version was specifically made to make Silksong in Minecraft. I mean, these blocks are perfect. At the time of me building this, there was no replay mod for the version, so I can't show any pretty shots of me making the build, but I took plenty of screenshots and videos to show off the stages. I started by using stone and trying my best to scale out the platforming for the map. Once I was happy with it, I went in and started detailing it. I tried my best to make sure the detail matched up as much as I could with how it looked in the game. This fire location here is called Deep Docks, and the new copper blocks worked flawlessly to recreate that look. Once I finished the foreground, I made a big box behind it where I started to build the background inside. I think the Deep Docks location looks incredible. The fight is on this platform floating in the middle of lava with a massive globe and infrastructure in the background. It looks really cool. And I think I did a pretty good job bringing it into Minecraft. Lastly, at the end of the level, there will be this big bell which is covered in silk. The second location is called Moss Grotto. I mostly used cave and tuff blocks for building this one. I personally think terrain is where my skill set is best cut out for building, so I didn't have too much trouble building this. There isn't much I can do to describe how it looks, so I'll just show you. I made sure to have these 2 rows of blocks act as the collision. This is where the player will be standing. I tried to put the player between 2 blocks instead of the center of one because I feel like it makes them look more like they're part of the world rather than just walking on a flat plane. Although this meant I had to be extra careful with how I built to make sure the blocks don't interrupt where the player can stand. I essentially had to make the same thing twice while making it look different and not flat. For the character controller, I'm gonna start by grabbing the knight from my previous project and importing them into this one. I started by grabbing all the model files from the previous map and putting them inside of a brand new resource pack. I also changed the texture a bit to match with the hues and colors of the OG Minecraft palette a bit more rather than my dulled down Hollow Knight one. For a quick recap of how this 2D controller works, we put the player in a third-person perspective and limit them to facing one direction by lowering their sensitivity slider to the point where they can't move their mouse anymore. This creates a 2D effect. After making the player invisible, we put the model on the player's head. Then in the JSON properties, we drag the player's model down to the ground. Afterwards, we use armor stands to track when the player is moving, and we use scoreboards to track if they're jumping. We then use this data to apply the proper animations. Lastly, we use an interaction entity to detect whether they're left or right clicking. I also swapped the focused keybind from shift to control, that way I could use shift to implement the knight's dash ability. But now for the new part. It's time to make Hornet. I started by redoing my old model, since I'm not gonna lie, it was kinda shit. I tried my best to match the style I used for the Hollow Knight model. I was much happier with this new version. I then went on to make all the poses and animations for Hornet. When it came to making a new controller for Hornet, I started by just making her a Knight reskin, and then I started modifying some parameters. I made the hitbox taller, I made the speed faster, I made the jump one block higher. I also gave her some new abilities. Instead of making them spells, since I don't know how they'll work in Silksong, I made it so when you right click it gives her a diagonal / grapple attack that damages enemies. I have no idea what the names of these things are called, so I'm just going off gameplay footage. Feel free to correct me in the comments. I also gave Hornet a longer range for attacks. From watching the gameplay, it looks like the soul meter works differently from the Knights. When hitting an enemy, this little icon here slowly fills up with what I'm assuming is Silk. When it's full, it'll fill up this container here, which I'm assuming is Soul. Once this is full, you can use it to instantly regain 3 health. That might not be completely accurate, but it's based off what I have with this footage here, so it's the closest I think I'm gonna get it. Once the game comes out in 2027, I'll maybe correct it, I don't know. But this moveset feels very dynamic to control, and it's fun to play with. I think it works great. This here is the hub. This is where you can select which boss you want to play. You can start a boss fight by running into either portal. However, this is also where you can swap your character. In the action bar, it'll tell you which character you have selected, and how you can swap to the other one. Whichever character you have selected is the one you'll play as when you start a game. If there is a second player, there'll be whichever character you didn't select. Also, quick shout out to Bucko for helping out with the build here. This here is Moss Grotto, the location where you'll fight Moss Mother. Making your way through the terrain, you'll find this area here, which is where Moss Mother will be hiding in this shell. She'll break out and the fight will begin. Moss Mother herself is a bunch of Minecraft display entities. I made her move around in the animations by using a free Blockbench plugin called Animated Java, meaning pretty much all of what you see going on right now is fully vanilla Minecraft. The only mod being used which affects gameplay is a small mod made by Kerman, which changes your keybinds and settings, allowing for more control and functionality, as well as completely stopping you guys from breaking my maps. I'm looking at you, Blue SR.
Oh god, all settings should be preset, so don't mess with them. I hope it's fine.
This also changes the physics as seen in the Hollow Knight map. Moss Mother flies around and can occasionally do one of 3 attacks. The first attack is very simple. She pulls back and then does a quick dash across the screen. You can dodge this one by simply jumping over it. The second attack is where she quickly dashes into the roof, causing some spikes to fall down. Dodging this attack is pretty simple as well, you just move out of the way. For her final attack, it starts in a very similar way to the previous attack, where she dashes into the roof, but this time it causes some enemies to fall down. These enemies are classified as Enemy 38 according to the wiki. Very creative name, I know. From what I can tell, their AI is no different from the Crawlid from Hollow Knight, so I just reused their exact AI here. Quick thank you to ZammyZ for coming on and making the models for these dudes. But yeah, that's really it. Moss Mother is a pretty simple boss fight from the looks of it. It also appears to be very early in the game, if not the first boss fight, so it makes sense that it isn't hard at all. Once defeating her, you can make your way into the next room and climb this chain here to beat the level and be returned to the hub. Next up, we have Lace, who has quite the sick boss fight. When finding her on this platform, she'll be conducting some butterflies before talking some absolute smack at Hornet and getting ready to fight. Her attack patterns are quite complex compared to the Moss Mother, but here's what I saw encoded for the map. Her first and most simple attack is a dash in the direction of the player. This can be dodged by simply jumping over it if you're quick enough, but because the attack is so fast, you'll have much more luck by just dashing in the opposite direction, or right-clicking to deal some damage and then being launched up. Her second attack is 3 quick slashes one after another, moving a little bit forwards each time. This one can easily be jumped over, but she doesn't do all 3 slashes in the same direction. She'll track where the player is and attack that way, so it's better just to jump back and avoid her during this attack. For her third attack, she'll leap up in the air and dash back down where the player is standing. In order to dodge this one, you can either dash right out of the way before she launches down, or jump at the same time as her and do a dashing attack into her, which launches her down and making her take damage while you recoil away safely. Lastly, she can jump into the middle of the stage and do a circle of different swipes in different directions before crashing back to ground. This can be countered by just walking away. All of the attacks on their own aren't anything too dangerous, but the challenge in this fight comes from how quickly these attacks are played back to back. This makes it pretty tricky to dodge. I also had a little bit of trouble with Lace, as this is the first ever boss fight I've made which isn't in an enclosed room. So I had a lot of trouble trying to fix her AI so she didn't constantly jump into the lava. This caused me quite a bit of trouble, but it all worked out in the end. After beating Lace, she'll jump away and the gates will open up. You can then make your way to the right where you'll find this room with a bell covered in silk. You can destroy this silk and ring the bell to end the level. For extra polish, I went back in and made all the attacks some unique particles whenever performed, and some even shake the camera similar to how it does in Hollow Knight and Silksong. I used a resource pack to make nice fading black transitions whenever starting and ending a level. I also added loads of sound effects on top of every action, so basically for Hornets and the boss's attacks. This all comes together and makes the map feel very snappy to play. On top of that, we got the one and only note block map pack on to recreate parts of the Silksong OST and note blocks for this project, and they're as hype as ever. Playlist with all the Hollow Knight themed music will be linked below, as well as featured on the end card if you want to go check it out. I know this was a bit of a shorter video for a shorter project, and I was originally not planning on making a video on it, but I'm pretty happy with how the map turned out, so I might as well upload it for you all. Once again, you'll be able to download this map for yourself once this video hits 10,000 likes. Comment on which maps and games you want to see me make in the next video as well, and subscribe if you like these projects. Once again, a big thank you to Primicon for making this map possible. Alright, that's all. Goodbye forever.